DJ PK, it is time now to talk with Eric Pincus, national NBA writer for Bleacher Report. Eric, good morning. Welcome back to the show.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
For people who don't know, Eric, you made your name as a writer for multiple reasons, but one of the big one was understanding the salary cap and understanding the finances and using that to help predict what teams were going to do and needed to do. And you know who's sitting in that spot right now? Well, with the second apron, I guess a lot of teams are, but the Utah Jazz are for sure. And we were curious what you thought of the Jazz offer to Kessler and what you thought of Kessler's meetings with apparently 3 teams. The Athletic reporting that, Tony Jones. Where do you think the line for the bidding will go for Kessler and how long the Jazz should stay in it? That's a lot all at once. Jump in wherever you'd like.
Well, I mean, to go backwards, like how long is an interesting question because he's restricted. And the reality is restricted players have a tough go. It is the toughest spot to be in as a player. So the team has the leverage to wait all the way until about October, technically. So time frame, it doesn't have to be a rush. I'm not saying it should go to October, but that's what we saw with guys like Jonathan Kuminga and Quentin Grimes and some of the guys last year who were restricted. So it's not abnormal for these things to wait. It's up to the agent representing Kessler to try to push it through and to try to get something going. So and then time frame, there are very few teams that really have money, and they have money now. One of those would be the Lakers, and I think that's the obvious pursuer. When they say 3 teams, I kind of read that as the Lakers, and the Lakers. I'm not sure who the other 2 teams are. Like the Bulls traded or are trading for Nicholas Claxton. They have that spending power. The Nets could make a run. I'd have to look at what their books are going to be after some of the moves they're making, but they could theoretically make a run. And then there are some sort of upstart teams that can get to cap room, like maybe the Clippers if they trade Kawhi, or maybe the Pistons if they don't pay Jalen Duren. So there are some potential suitors, but really it's up to the Jazz and Kessler to work it out. And at least the reported number, I believe, was about $25 million starting salary. And so you figure, the max is 41. He's probably shooting for closer to anything above 30, 35 in that range. And so that's kind of at least my opinion, the range of what they're negotiating. Forget the number of years and all that is a much bigger number, over 4 or 5 years or whatever. But I'm saying, probably the negotiation is over $25 to $35 million starting salary.
Okay, so that's the framework of the salaries, right? The range that you just established. How much do the Lakers then want him to be able to be in that position to offer that over 30, getting close to 35?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it feels like their primary goal is to upgrade at center. That seems to be what they're trying to do now. DeAndre Ayton opted into his contract. He's got about $8 million. They'll probably, I assume, bring back Jackson Hayes. But to upgrade to Kessler, who's somebody that has been linked for at least 2 years, maybe longer, with the Lakers. There was a time where the Jazz considered trading him earlier and ultimately decided not to. And I believe the Lakers have been in on Kessler for all of that time. They want a rim protector, somebody who's got real height. How high they'll go is ultimately the question, and they could get to that. If the demand was 35 or 32.5 or somewhere around there, something above 30, they could make what's called an offer sheet. And an offer sheet is, it's a contract, but it's one that the Jazz would have a day to match. And he could sign that with the Lakers on July the 6th, and so the Jazz would have until the 7th to decide. And then you're really choosing, do you want to commit that money and keep Kessler on what would be a 4-year deal, probably starting at around 32, 35, somewhere in that range. Maybe it has a trade bonus. Maybe there's some other favorable language in it that makes it ugly. Or the alternative is if the Lakers are going to do that and you aren't going to match that, maybe you negotiate with the Lakers and do some sort of sign-in trade where they get Kessler and maybe the Jazz get something back. But, the Lakers, what that gives them is that gives them surety. They don't have to wait and wonder if the Jazz will match. But they're not going to give up a ton because if the price is too high, they'll just do the offer sheet and force Utah's hand. And then if they match, then the Lakers would just have to have a really good plan B, which I don't know if they have at this point.
So do you think in the end of the day the Lakers are going to be able to pry Kessler away from the Jazz one way or another, whether it's, like you said, a sign and trade, the signing that isn't, or the offer that isn't matched?
Well, it's really up to the Jazz and their their framework, their situation, their decisions. Like, do you lose this kid for nothing and let him walk, or do you get something out of this situation, or do you keep him? And the challenge is if you match an offer sheet, then he can block a trade for a period of time. And so there are some issues. There's just some issues. Like there's one other option would be what's called a qualifying offer, where let's say the Lakers Kessler doesn't sign this offer. Lakers don't give him this giant offer. He can come back for $7 million. And the challenge there is also trading him becomes difficult for a lot of various reasons. It's difficult to get value because he can block a trade. The team that gets him doesn't really have the right to pay him significant money. So it's really up to the Jazz. You obviously know the Jazz have Jaren Jackson and Larry Markkinen, and then there's a report that they're keeping Nurkic. So. And not to mention they have Filipowski. So, there's already a decent number of big guys and sizable, and a lot of money, not to mention that you're going to have to pay, if you're the Jazz, Keontae George, probably an extension this summer. And if you don't pay him an extension this summer, I'd be surprised. But if they don't, then they're going to have to pay him next year. So it's not necessarily Kessler's number this year, as much as it is like how much do they really have an appetite to carry in salary with Keontae at a big number, Jaren Jackson Jr., Markkinen, you got Nurkic, at some point it feels like Kessler's expendable, but I don't know their final decision, and I think everyone's sort of wondering as well, probably including the Lakers.
It would seem like if they decided that Kessler is a part of their future and they bring him back, then they would have in mind down the line, as you said, not necessarily for this year, but down the line, they'd have to get rid of one of the other guys, and maybe that could possibly be in their mindset that we'll hold on to this for a couple years and then move one of the higher-priced guys, which is difficult, but I think as we've seen is doable. I guess the thought being that maybe that they think that is plausible, or they just let him go. It seems like those are the options.
Yeah, I mean the Jazz have control, so it's a position of strength. It's their decision, and you're absolutely right where they could say like, let's just keep him. We'll pay whatever it ends up being. It may be very expensive, and then they have the options because we don't really know. The Jazz don't. No one really knows what this team is and what they look like and how it all fits together. You have the kid they drafted in Peterson, who's a nice, really exciting young guard. Does that backcourt with those big guys, including Kessler, jump the team forward from being like? And obviously they were lousy this last year, but it kind of seemed intentionally lousy.
Right.
So this team could jump not just to play-in, but even to playoffs. We don't know how good Minnesota's going to be. I don't think they're catching up to the Thunder or the Spurs, but the Nuggets we're still waiting on. What are they going to be? But the Jazz can make a run, and I'm not saying it's a run to the finals or anything like that, but they could be a serious team. And with that in mind, wouldn't you want good players? And like obviously, if the Lakers did a sign and trade or some other team did a sign and trade, you're going to get something back. But there's like a Dalton Connect, move the needle. They've already had Jared Vanderbilt. Like I don't know that he helps. I don't know that the Lakers are giving away their first round picks. It may be more of a test and a push. Maybe it's better for them to just push a higher number onto Kessler. These are all things that we don't know, and we'll know soon, probably within a week. We may have an answer, but it's really up to the Jazz to decide what is in their best interest. I'm out of LA. Laker fans want what Laker fans want. It's not Jazz can't care about that. They can't even focus on what the Jazz fans want because they have to make the best decisions as a whole, regardless of what the fans want. Like they have to make the best decisions for the team. So, this isn't for Kessler. This isn't for any fans of any. This is the Jazz making the best decision on what they think leads to the best team. And that could mean letting Kessler go and not tying up that money, or it could mean that put him down, whatever that number ends up being. They have the leverage, and then in a year's time or 2 years' time, whatever, when the money starts to get really crunchy, then you have to make difficult decisions. Make them when you have to make them, not now where, yes, you have to make a decision on Kessler, but it doesn't have to be, we're not going to pay him now because we'll have a problem later.
For the team that doesn't get Walker Kessler, whether the Jazz or the Lakers, and I liked what you said about the Pistons, they're looking to add something. I don't know that they have to add one specific thing. They need to get stronger somewhere. And obviously they had a bunch of money to go after Reeves, and then they didn't get him. Reportedly, it was them who really put the screws to the Lakers and made that number get really big really fast. So who's to say they won't do that again to somebody, and maybe they are one of the teams in on Kessler. But these teams that don't get him, where do they pivot? Who are the next guys and what do they cost? Because there's always that thing, hey, we might only get 70 or 80% of the player, but if we get him for 40 or 50% of the money in a salary cap world, that might be a bonus.
Right. Well, free agency has evolved in the NBA, and in the most recent collective bargaining agreement, the NBA and the NBPA, that's the agent side of it, they made it easier to make trades and easier to make extensions. It might be a sort. I don't know. Enough time has passed where the Gordon Hayward thing is really, Jazz losing Hayward because they couldn't extend him. That rule has more or less been adjusted, and so it's easier to make extensions now. And that means free agency, because more players are extending or more players are traded. It's easier to get things done without going to free agency. The next best players that are available, probably Mitchell Robinson, just won a championship. The Knicks probably can't afford him. Challenge with Mitch is that he gets hurt a lot. He is a reserve and doesn't start. Like historically, he plays a limited number of games, limited number of minutes. Same thing with Robert Williams III, who is really nice player in the playoffs, has experience. He's somebody who is going to help any team. However, same issue. Barely plays. The kind of guy you want to just make sure he's healthy when the time comes, and can help you. And he was really positive for the Blazers. There's vets like Vucevic. There's a guy, John Collins, who's not really a center. He's more of a power forward. I wouldn't want him as my center per se, but he, in a pinch, he could certainly play that. Mo Wagner may leave Orlando instead of staying in his brother's shadow. But the Andre Drummond, the list starts to get Marvin Bagley, more of a power forward. Jock Landale. It's not like a great market, and we may find there's another trade to be had with some other center who needs to relocate, but it is not this robust market of there's these incredible players. But there's one other guy I'll mention. Try not to say it. Mamouche Kavili. I've been saving it because I'm not great at pronouncing his last name. And he's more of a power forward who can play some center, but he's somebody who's a good option, I think, for the Lakers as well. Or anybody who just needs he's a good scorer. He's tough. He's physical. Thought he had a good year. So there's guys out there, Kevon Looney, there's guys, but there's no one on the other than Duren, other than someone stealing Duren. Those are the two mainline dudes who can start for you, who can do a lot. And Kessler is even a question mark. Missed almost all of last year, but you're assuming that he's well past that injury.
How about the Lakers and LeBron? Obviously the Warrior thing has been heating up, and what do you think is going to happen there relative to the money that they're going to offer and what he's looking for?
Well, I don't think they can go back to LeBron at $50 million because all these conversations we're having, basically evaporate if they're paying LeBron that full money. They're paying Austin, they're paying Luka. They don't really, they have Ayton. There's just not a lot of money on their books outside, I guess, Vanderbilt. But if you put it all together with LeBron at $50 million, then there is no real chasing of Kessler and all these other things. So I think plan A, B, C for the Lakers is to find a way to upgrade properly around Luka Doncic. What he does is he's a creating guard/forward, and you have Austin Reeves, who's a creator, creating his own shot, creating shots for others. That's what Luka does. Now you put in LeBron, and you're adding another creator who can score and create shots for others, and so it kind of works. They got to the second round. although Luka wasn't healthy. But it's duplication at that role, whereas they don't have anything else in the other roles. Like, you need shooters, you need athletes, you need defenders, you need size. They have so many needs, and if they put all of that into LeBron, that's a problem. So if it's not 50, what's that number? And if the Warriors can only offer up to 15, can the Lakers offer 20, and that's enough for LeBron? And can they go spend on Kessler and or Dern or other guys and still have 20 million and pay LeBron 20 million? And it gets really dicey and really difficult really quickly. They start to potentially lose others like Rui Hachimura, who could leave, Luke Kennard. You start going down the list. Sounds like they're going to lose Marcus Smart. So, I personally, I'm not in charge. But if it were up to me, I would move on from LeBron. As incredible as he's had a career, as incredible he is as a, he's a star. He's still at 40, almost 42. He's still arguably the biggest or one of the biggest stars in the NBA. So I get it's not an easy decision, but it's you have Luka. You need to build around Luka the best way possible, and I don't think that coincides with LeBron. And you just have to put aside the emotion and the legacy and all of that, and just accept this team is really, really good, but not great.